million barrels out of the market, or you projected 2 million barrels over a space of time because of activities that didn't happen, that perception will then bring the price up until we find equilibrium. As you can see, we're beginning to see 2015 prices actually higher than predicted. We predicted 2015 average price to be $49. It's looking more like $55, $56. That would be the average. And it's also predicted that average price in 2016 will be more like $65. So in the foreseeable future, we think that you are going to see that balance somewhere between $60 and $80 per barrel, not much more than that. Now, this is what I've tried to discuss in the past 10 minutes. Just, global issues, policies as they affect prices, policies as even domestic policies here in Nigeria, as they affect investments in exploration and development, and therefore as they affect production. We've seen it from a global scale. Now let me get down specifically to the real, what I really want to discuss. I'll take the next 15 minutes to discuss what we expect our energy policies to be in Nigeria going forward. And I think the time is out. We have a new regime that promises to do wonders. This is probably the time for them to listen and figure out what wonders they can do. Now, if you look at this graph, it's talking about our domestic gas production. In 2012, we're just climbing up to 1 BCF per day. 1 BCF per day. By the end of this year, we'll be talking about 2 BCF per day. 1 BCF per day, we're generating a little under 4 gigawatts of electricity, 4,000 megawatts of electricity. It's projected that by 2020, our domestic consumption should go up to 3.2 BCF per day. And the 3.2 BCF per day should generate for us 15 gigawatts of electricity. To meet our real aspirations, because we really should be generating about 32 gigawatts of electricity. To do that, we're going to be requiring 7.3 BCF per day of gas consumption, which means that to attain our power requirements, we will be producing gas 7 times. That is, if we were to attain that in 2020, it will mean that between 2012 and 2020, in 8 years, we will multiply our domestic gas consumption by 7, it will be 7-fold. Now, what has triggered this huge consumption? Remember I said earlier that over a period of 39 years, our domestic gas consumption stayed flat at 300, 400 million scf a day. We had no use for it. And of course, we had no use for it. And we didn't, those things for which gas, you need gas to create, they were also not created. So the power privatization, the power reform, has been the major factor driving this. So the power reform is now such that to generate that power you're looking for, domestic gas has become more critical to us as a nation than export gas. By 1999, when our first LNG train took off, it was El Dorado for us. And the planning at that time, from 1999 up to recently, was such that all we needed to do was to monetize our gas. Monetize our gas. Remember that in 50 years, all we have done is monetize our crude oil. Now, this is where the shift will come, and we'll talk about that very quickly. So I have said that in the next 5 years, we should see at least a tripling of our domestic gas consumption from 1 BCF a day to 3 BCF a day. I also think that just 2 events, we move our domestic refining from near zero today in actual capacity to 1 million barrels per day in 2020. We have locked in capacity of 445,000 barrels of refining capacity in refineries that do not function. They don't work. They haven't worked for 20 years. Forget about what we budget for turnaround maintenance. They have not worked, and they will not work. So hopefully they will be sold. I'm assuming that in the next 2-3 years, the refineries will be sold. Now, if you add that to what I have there is 400,000 barrels a day refining capacity by Dangote. That has since gone up to 650,000 barrels a day. The refinery under construction by Dangote. So if that refinery comes up, hopefully at the end of 2017 or sometime in 2018, and the 3 existing refineries are sold, even those 3 refineries that are sold, you will require about 3 years, a minimum of 2 years, to get them, to revamp them and get them to function. So those 2 sets of actions between Dangote commissioning the refinery and selling the 3 refineries, we jumpstart us from near zero refining capacity to 1 million barrel refining capacity by 2020. So when you put the 2 together, 3.2 BCF gas consumption and a refining capacity of 1 million barrels a day. Then you start, it comes back again now to what we're talking about, our GDP contribution. The oil and gas contribution to GDP in Nigeria, see on the left there, 14%. We just took a look at some of the OPEC countries. Of course, smaller in population, all of them. But also, most of them have their oil and gas industry integrated in such a way that they are a huge contributor to GDP. So you see huge petrochemical complexes that then produce raw materials into industry. You see gas generating electricity. And so in Saudi Arabia, for instance, you look at Kuwait, where oil and gas contribution to GDP is 60%. Or you look at Qatar, where it's also 59-60%. In those places, it's a fully enhanced system where oil and gas is not just a revenue earner, but an energy enabler. And that's really the point I am coming to. And I will quote Professor Iledari. Professor Iledari had said, and I quote, in Nigeria, the contribution of oil is mostly revenue. And revenue does not translate into GDP if there are no productive activities in the economy, which come from oil. So if the local content law is fully implemented, the contribution of oil sector to GDP will rise. Now this is the way it works. Think about it. If this entire country shuts down, let nobody go to work for 1 year, and the 10 or 12 oil companies that produce our 2 million barrels put all their staff together, probably about 7,000. But put all the ancillary staff, all the contractor staff, put everything together. Say 200,000 people out of the 140 million. If every other person stays at home, and you ask these 200,000 people working in these oil companies and their contractors to go to work, who will produce the 2 million barrels we need? And will earn the revenue that goes into the financial account. So we actually have a situation where no more than 2% of the population are contributing 85% of federal government revenue. That is why the GDP contribution of the oil and gas sector is so abysmally low at 14%, even though it generates so much revenue. So for us, oil has just been a revenue earner. Unfortunately, the first thought of gas was also as a revenue earner. So we came up with LNG, refrigerate the gas and export it. And of course, we are quick to say federal government has earned $4 billion in the past 3 years from LNG export. That is fine. But just like it was with our oil policy for 50 years, the gas revenues coming out of just one LNG plant in Bonny, the contribution to our GDP can only be abysmal. So where are we supposed to go as a country? where will our future energy growth come from? Gas, I've mentioned, we're going from 300 million scf to 1 BCF now, 3.2 BCF in 2020, and hopefully, eventually to about 7.3 BCF per day. And so the emphasis today is not on gas export, but on domestic gas consumption. I've just mentioned that our refining capacity will go from near zero to 1 million barrels in 2020. And that's not far away. That's going to happen from the things that are happening. And that power will go from a flat, it's been flat at between 1,500 and 2,000 megawatts for the past how many years. That should go up to 15 gigawatts in 2020 and hopefully eventually to 32 gigawatts. So to summarize, I will say that our energy policies going forward must witness a fundamental shift. Crude oil must shift from being a source of income to being a source of energy. Gas must shift from being a source of income to being a source of energy. Now, if you combine these two, the projection that I just made, it means that what should concern our planners today in the oil and gas industry is not revenue generation, but domestic energy security. For the past 50 years, our oil and gas have been extracted to be major contributors to energy security, Europe and America. And we didn't think that energy security was important to our own domestic economy. Now, I've given you just 3 very simple examples that demonstrate how this can be. We start consuming, by projection, by 2020, we start consuming a minimum of 3.2 BCF of gas per day from near zero. And that 3.2 BCF of gas then generates for you 15 gigawatts of electricity. We start refining 1 million barrels a day, that's 40% of your production, refined locally. If you stretch that to maybe 2025, we could be consuming 6 to 7 BCF of gas, generating 40 gigawatts of electricity. What will this do for the economy? This will lead to substantial growth in manufacturing. In fact, by 2020 on these projections, we'll be net exporters of fertilizer instead of net importer. We're almost there. Net exporter of cement. Today, one of the reasons Lafarge, as big as they are, is finding it difficult to cope with Dangote is that Dangote's plant from the one were built, modernized to work with gas-fired plant as against LPFO. And so its actual production cost is about half of that Lafarge. And Lafarge is struggling to pick up. So gas becomes an enabler in industries, heavy industries, fertilizer, cement. Now we'll get into petrochemicals. So think about it, 15 gigawatts of electricity, 3 BCF of gas, 1 million barrels domestic refining. Just those 3 elements, I said, will lead to substantial growth in manufacturing. Cement, fertilizer, petrochemicals. Will lead to a diversified economy and significant GDP growth. Of course, not to talk of the massive employment that comes with it. Even more importantly, it will protect our economy from the cyclical oil shocks. If we were refining today 40-50% of our own production and utilizing all our gas for these things I've listed, our economy will not have reacted to a drop in price within 3 months. Within 3 months of a drop in price, the central bank almost has no clue what to do to stabilize our currency. That will start slowing down when our oil and gas become enablers to the economy and not just revenue earners. So the only thing I want all of us to take away from this discussion is this one sentence, that our crude oil and natural gas endowment must shift from being sources of income to being sources of energy. And that domestic energy security, which means crude oil and its refined products, gas and its use, and then electricity that is generated from there. The three of them combined to establish domestic energy security is what we need as the enabler for a quantum leap in both our GDP and our domestic economy. That's the message that I'm passing on to you today. Thank you.